Celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Hey, buddy, man. Welcome to the show. Brook Bishop is here in the house. And I got to say, we're purposely I'm doing a couple of podcasts back to back that are sales focused. And when I was sitting down going, who do I need to speak to? Who can I get on the podcast? When I'm looking through my Rolodex going, I need to bring somebody in to talk about sales. We're kind of 2 months through the beginning of the year. People are getting to the point where they're in their business. They set a plan. Plans probably are not working out the way they thought they would, because they never do. That's just planning. And I wanted to kind of strategically bring some guys in for some sales content. And dude, you're on the top of my list to get in here. So, just to introduce you to, and I'll maybe let you kind of a little intro, because you worked for an individual that we know. And we're instrumental at creating the sales plan and engineering that whole process of sales. And that's where we met. You grew the business from, virtually like, at its grassroots level to, many millions of dollars. And so I just want to get you on the show, chat about it. Welcome. Appreciate you being here, brother. It's so great to see you. It's been a long time, and I'm blessed to have you on the show, man.
No, dude, thank you for bringing me on. And it has been a wild ride. When you and I connected, it was a couple of weeks ago. We're like, wait, have we known each other that long? Is that for real? Like, there's no way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's I know it's been well over a decade. It's pretty bananas.
It is.
But
it is.
Yeah, man. In the world of sales, just kind of the snapshot of how that came into play. I originally was going to go to school the traditional route, and I was actually slated to go to Stanford, and I was going to be a physician's assistant. That was kind of the trajectory of where I was going to roll. And yeah, just very quickly did not like the traditional route, butted heads with a lot of my professors, and jumped into the world of business and sales. And I was very, very fortunate at the time. My mentor, who actually later became the director of coaching for Tony Robbins, but my uncle, he took me under his wing and really started to mentor me in the world of sales. And that started this, I guess, dominoes or snowball of experience, where I got to go work for his mentor, who was a real estate sales trainer in Los Angeles. I got recruited out of there to work with a gentleman named Buffini. So I don't know if you're familiar with Brian, but he's huge in the real estate space. So at that point in time, I want to say we had 350 coaches on our staff, and each was coaching around 70 to 120 clients. So we had a very, very large organization. It was massive. And so from there, had a lot of interesting learning experiences and getting fired from that company. So apparently I didn't learn my lesson by flipping the bird to the professors. I got to go get the same experience, and the lesson showed up again when I butted heads with one of the directors there. Then I got to go cut my teeth in the coaching realm, and actually got recruited by Tony. Was actually kind of how that path rolled.
You've worked for some incredible companies and some incredible sales training, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm very passionate about sales and the sales process. It's how I started out in business. I flunked out of college and or kind of played myself euchre out of college. Never actually went to class, and so I got into the sales world. And I heard Peter Drucker at one point said in one of his books, "Nothing happens in business until a sale is made," and it was something that I heard really early, like as a teenager. And it hit me, and that statement, that quote has never left my mind ever. In all the businesses that we've started up, whether we bought or started, and we're currently in the process of buying another company right now. And one of the things that we're looking at is to buying a company where we can implement a sales process to optimize and drive revenue. So many people have businesses, but they lack sales processes. They just kind of stumble through the whole thing. And so I wanted to kind of shed some light on it. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I know, you have an unbelievably vast experience of not just in sales, like you can be in sales, but creating the process and really like kind of syncing it out and digging into what improves the sales process and what the pieces are that have to go along with it. And so, dude, I'm happy to have you here, and I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Dude, timing's so perfect. And I'm excited to peel back the curtain on this whole topic, because it's a wild ride in the world of sales if you don't have consistency. And so many people, I mean, how many businesses do we know just because they have those peaks and valleys? That's what ends up putting them out, just because they can't get their head wrapped around consistent enrollments or consistent sales or consistent revenue generation. So yeah, let's dig in, man. This will be cool.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's true. Like having consistent sales revenue and having a process that you can really start to analyze, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And I'm actually curious about when it comes to that, the analysis of the sales process, even when you guys are doing your training and whatnot. And I know I'm kind of jumping in, this is kind of random, but it just kind of hit my mind do you guys do a lot of like videotaping, role playing when you're doing your training and coaching and stuff like that?
Yeah, it depends on the sales style. So yes, long answer is yes. If somebody's doing over the phone sales, we definitely want to dig in and take a recording and really listen to, what's the strategy that somebody's implementing? Like, are they following a process that can be rinse and repeat? If it's face-to-face, or if it's from the front of room or from a stage, absolutely, we want to get video and we want to be able to dissect it. The trickiest part is most sales organizations, you've got people that go rogue. And so that's the trickiest part, is getting people singing the same sheet of music to the same tone and building a formula that is consistent. Because if you don't have that, it's really hard to coach and tweak things if you've got a moving target all the time. So yes, long answer to your question, absolutely. We love doing call reviews, or we love doing video reviews, depending on the style of sale.
Yeah, that always reminds me of the comment of the quote, and I think this came from the SEALs, but it's people often think that they'll rise to the occasion, like given the event, they'll rise to the occasion, but they typically fail to the level of their preparation. And so, that's the one thing that we always quote to our sales teams. It's like, look, make no mistake. Like, I know you think you're going to walk in there and you're going to kill it. And you might be thinking that in the process, like in the moment, but typically you are falling to the level of your preparation. And if your preparation's not there, that becomes a problem. I'm curious, I kind of started a little bit randomly just asking that one question, but maybe I'd ask this is, you've done this so many times before. When you walk in and for business owners out there, or when they're looking at their sales process, what are some of the beginning fundamental, things that you are looking at? Like, are you looking at product? Are you looking at the customer? Where's the mistakes that are made? I mean, I know we'll get all into this, but I'm curious, where would you start if you're walking in and you really want to dive in deep to somebody's sales process, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, how they align with the customer, all that kind of stuff?
Great question. So it depends. There's two different angles, right? So we have solopreneurs who are perhaps they're the boss and they're also doing their sales and they're also fulfilling on whatever somebody's purchasing. You've got the other side of the house, which is an established business who's already got, let's say they've got a sales team. And that can go from one person on their sales team to 10,000 people on their sales team, or go even bigger, right? So what I usually will recommend for people to do out of the gates, because most people don't have this, is first, before you do anything, document your existing process, right? Because I cannot tell you how many companies I've gone into and I'm like, cool, what's your sales process? And they're like, I don't know, right? Or they think they know, and then as soon as we start to document it, they're like, what the hell? I didn't know we were doing that. And, oh, wait, what? Susie's doing what? Wait, what gets sent out? I've never seen that. I've never approved that. So before you do anything, document what exists right here and now, because it's really hard to have an effect on something if you don't even know what the heck it is to begin with, right? So
no, go ahead.
No. I say most sales trainers or most sales, consulting companies that come in, they usually walk in the door and they start plugging in their process to things. I would just say that's the kiss of death, because now you're just adding more ingredients to an already mixed up soup.
Right. Yeah. So I was just going to actually ask you, sorry, I wasn't going to cut you off, but I was just like, I was thinking as you were talking, I'm like, geez, if of all the companies that you go into and coach, how many would not have a documented sales process?
98%.
Really? 98%?
Yeah, so just to give you context, so actually this funny situation. So did I tell you about my first day at Tony Robbins? Did I ever share that story with you? All right. So when I was driving into my first day with Tony, I was, this is my dream job. I'm going to work with the biggest name in the game. I'm in the world of personal development. Like, I was fired up, right? So I'm cranking the tunes. I'm sitting in traffic in San Diego. I pull up to the office. Now, first off, I'm looking at the office from the outside. And I'm like, okay, this isn't the palatial office building I would have thought that, Tony's organization would have existed at. I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe they had good rent. I don't know. So HR takes me to my cubicle space. And I kid you not, in my head, there was an what the F moment where I'm like, is this for real? They're walking me down the hallway and there's stains all over the carpet. They come up to my cubicle space, and I kid you not, the walls of the cubicle were folded in. And somebody rather large had sat on the desk because it was buckled in the middle and the drawers were stuck out. Okay. So I'm like, is this for real? Like, am I getting punked? Like, what's going on here? So I asked HR. Now, the next piece, there was no chair at my desk. Okay. So not only was everything, but very well organized. And I go, cool. Like, what's the sales process? Crickets, right? And so my first day was me leaving, literally getting to the office, turning around, walking out the front door. And I went to Home Depot to buy brackets and parts to fix the desk. And I went to Best Buy and picked up a Pilates ball so I could at least have a chair to sit on. And then the next thing is I went and fired up the computer, and like 3 inches on the perimeter of the computer were all blurred out because it was so old. And I'm like, I'm going to get migraines from this thing. So I went down to the IT department. I'm like, hey, do you guys have any extra computers? And they're like, nope, you got what you got. So the next step was I went on my cell phone at the time. It was the version 1.0 of iPhone. And I ordered myself a Dell computer. And so my first day, my welcome was like nothing worked. It was all broken. And it was not at all what I thought it was going to be, let alone having a tried and true process. It just didn't exist. So that was a real big eye opener for me, where I went, okay, if a company that's like the go-to, the de facto in the space, if they didn't have process, like, holy crap, like if I could really crack the code, and if I could build out the strategy and structure for them, and I could get it on rinse repeat, I'm going to stand out like a sore thumb because everybody else is winging it. And so very quickly, that was where all my attention went to was.
And did you know that right away? And was that from being in the real estate game?
It was interesting. So when I worked for Buffini, one of the things that was brilliant about Buffini, right? They had a very simple business model. They taught referral-based marketing strategies for realtors. Like, cool. Like how to ask for referrals, how to build a referral-based business. On the surface, it looked very simple. Internally, they had an incredible machine. So they were really, really good with systems and process, but their content didn't go that deep. It was just this one simple strategy tactic. They built the largest coaching company in the world at that point. But they were really good at their systems. So taking that learning from working there and recognizing within Robbins, Tony's content was, in my opinion, and to this day, my opinion of Tony's content is it's the best.
Yeah, it's world class.
But their systems sucked. Right? So content great, systems not so great. So that was where I really looked at it and went, okay, I'm just going to be the systems guy, and I'm going to be really good at building consistency and building out these pieces. So I was able to dovetail quality content, quality strategy with really quality systems. And I mean, their sales team, when we came in there, their top salesperson was averaging, let's say 30 to 45K a month in revenue. My first month, I think I did over 100K. By the end of the first year, I mean, we ratcheted those numbers up massively. And we were able to scale because we had predictability, scalability, and we could actually coach the sales team because we knew what the hell they were doing.
Right. Okay. So you go in to a company, when you guys go in and do this, you go into a company, and the first thing you said, like, let's document the current sales process. And most people, and probably most people who are listening to this, really don't have a sales process in their business. So that's probably the first thing, guys. Like, if you have a business right now and you're listening to this podcast and you don't, well, we'll have some solutions for you through this, but also, and we'll talk about this later, but you can reach out to Brook, of course. But there's lots of people out there, but it's, I appreciate you being on the show, and I'm, extremely confident in your ability and your skill set and, my history with you to know that, hey, like, you're in trusted hands with Brook for sure, and his organization. But so you document the existing process. What would be the next step for somebody who wants to really kind of dig into this and start to generate some dependable revenue? I mean, and that's really, I think the key is building that like core foundation of, would you call it process? I don't know if I'm, if it's, I don't want to give the advice, but
workflow, process, back in the days of Tony, we called it a value chain. But yeah, I mean, workflows and just some simple tools for some people that are like, where the hell do I start with this? Two really killer tools. One that's really easy to use is called Lucid Chart. So if you check out Lucid Chart, it's literally a workflow builder. So you just drag and drop each step of the process and just go, okay, this happens, then what happens, then what happens, then what happens. And you just build it out from start to finish. Another one for those of you, if you're like, I have no process and I'm just starting my business, two really interesting pieces of AI that can help with this is if you hook ChatGPT up to a piece of software called Whimsical. Whimsical is it's a WH. I don't know if Canada, if you guys say that different, but if you sync those two up, you can actually give it a prompt and it'll build the flow out for you. So again, if you have nothing, start there just because it'll at least give you a starting point. But yeah, document end-to-end process. And to your question of then what, my next recommendation is then go ask your top producer what they do. So build it out as you believe leadership knows it. And as you're collecting the data, then go put that in front of your top producer and ask them, what do they do? What do they do different? Is there anything that's missing? Do they add anything in? Are they cutting anything out? Every time I've done that, I'm fascinated to find that usually they have less steps and that their framework is stronger, meaning when they have less steps, there's less potential opportunities for things to break in their process. But also, usually their language is different. Their positioning is different. Their timing is different than whatever management thinks is actually happening.
Right. So I just want to, because I'm making some notes here. So Lucid and Whimsical were the two pieces of software that you're recommending to chart this out. And then I love the piece that you just talked about, which was management builds it out. Hey, this is, in an ideal world, this is what we think we should be doing. But then there's what I guess maybe I would use it, but best producer, and I would call it best in class. And maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because when I think about, when you said that, I thought about, okay, best in class. Who's the best on the phone? Who's the best presenter? Who's the best at follow-up? Who's the best at getting referrals? There's all these different sections inside the sales process. And just because you're really good on the phone does not mean you're good at referral. Like, I sucked at referrals, and probably still do suck at, I do suck at referrals. It's, I got a bit of a limiting belief probably in that area. And so maybe you could just maybe speak to that inside the steps, if you don't mind.
For somebody who's listening, that's like, how the heck do I amplify my sales immediately? One of the things we put in play is called a scorecard. If you want to see the quickest, fastest, easiest way to ramp up your revenue, if you take all of your salespeople, you put them on the far left column, and then you have your KPIs. So you have the most critical variables of your sales process. Who's getting the most meetings booked? Who's got the most meetings running? Who's got the highest conversion rate? Who has the lowest cancellation rate? Who's getting the most referrals, to your point, right? But if you put just those right there, and then highlight, if you look at the last quarter, go down the line and go, okay, who's got the highest in each of these various categories? If all you did was elevate the team to whatever that highest person in each of those categories is, like, not exaggerating, what we see with most companies is they grow 300, 400, 500% if all you did was just elevate those pieces. That's before you bring in any sales tactical strategic, like how to, change up your entire scripting, or before you go into follow up or any of those other pieces. If all you did was just take those core pieces of what you're currently doing and just elevate the team, bring the rest, the people that are not at the top level of each of those areas, it's a complete game changer.
And sorry, what percentage do you think you grow by?
Anywhere from 300 to 500% on average is what we usually see.
Oh, wow. 300 to 500%.
You got to think of it this way. It's a compounding process.
Yeah.
So the top person who's getting the most meetings, if everybody's getting the same amount of meetings as that guy or gal, and then you look at, okay, show rate. Well, this other person's getting a better show rate. Well, if everybody's show rate now comes up to that percentage, well, this person's getting this conversion rate. If everybody's conversion rate, like, it's not just a one piece of the puzzle. It's literally, you're compounding across that whole thread of process.
Can you just talk a little bit about, like, if you were monitoring, and please jump in, like, I'm going to ask questions because as they pop to my head, but jump in and take control. Cause to me, I look at it, it's like, I'm passionate about sales and obviously I have some training, but you're the pro. So I'm really interested in what you have to say, because I know when I leave this room from this podcast, somebody's getting a phone call back at the office, and I already have 2 or 3 things that I'm going to be like, okay, we can do this. So I encourage the listeners, if we'll have an active conversation here so that they can write some things down where they can go back and start questioning their sales manager or their operations manager, whoever's in charge of, driving, director of revenue or, whatever it is. Some of the pieces that they can kind of like toggle the switches here a little bit and start measuring and analyzing and looking to improve performance. But what my question would be is, what do you see are the 5 big key areas, or whatever, maybe there's 6 or 7 of them, but what would be the big key areas?
In terms of the KPIs, or just big areas in general of all things sales?
Yeah, all things sales, but like something that an owner could go back and, or a director of sales could go back and start toggling some switches. It's like, be great to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first is and I'm going to say this as a blanket statement, but the world of sales, or let me reframe that. The world of buyers is radically different today than it was 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. So if you're running a business and you at one point in time, you were the head sales guy or the head sales gal, and now you fast forward 5, 10 years in the future and you're no longer in the sales seat and you've got a team doing sales, you have to know the buyer profiles it's a completely different ecosystem. So how they make decisions, how they're moving through their fears, and how objection handling, like that world is radically different now than it used to be.
Can you just talk about some of the changes? Because I love what you're saying here, because I feel sometimes, obviously I'm not sitting in the sales manager seat anymore. Those days are gone, and I feel like I'm a little bit out of touch personally. And so I actually am very aligned with what you're saying. And if I'm giving my advice or my coaching based on my experience, in the world that we're living in now and what we'll be living in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to change again. So please, if you don't mind, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the buyer profiles, so dynamics, the days of pressure closing somebody, pushing them over the finish line. It's not just hurting people's sales. So let me give you some stats on this. So for many years, the numbers usually looked like if you talk to 10 people, there's going to be 2 people that just come hell or high water, they're never going to buy whatever the heck you're selling. Like they're not consumers, or they're skeptics, or whatever the reason might be. Now, by numerics, statistics, 2 out of 10 people, even if you farted in the middle of your sales presentation,
right,
they're going to buy what you have because they have a pain and you have a solution that's there for them. So here's my caution to the wind. If your team by average is below 20%, that means your team is selling them out of purchasing.
Interesting.
Now, the companies, the teams that are crushing it, if you can massage those 6 in the middle, that's where the game is won. That's where you dominate your competition, because the mass majority of people out there are in 20% or less in a conversion rate. So how this kind of ties back to the buyer dynamics. The days of people having a problem, seeking out a solution, and making a buying decision, it's a radically different world. They need a lot more information. They also, and this is the most critical piece, we as a society have moved so far into thinking or looking at through the lenses of logic that our sales processes have become so freaking logical, and we're trying to have these combative logical dynamics in an enrollment conversation. When I would throw everybody into the bucket, if you want to just take one skill and just load up on one thing, it's turn your sales process into a massively emotional experience.
Yep.
Okay. If you're not getting into emotion, if you're not getting into people's core meaning, and I'll double click on this in a second, but if we're not getting into the meaning of working with you, you're going to lose your competition. You're going to lose to your competition. So what I mean by that, you need to have a sales process that opens up Pandora's box of what it would feel like if they decided to work with you, what it's felt like by not having you, what it's felt like to work with other people, your competitors, and perhaps they didn't get the result they want, or perhaps they're just, it's a terrible experience. And ultimately, you need to be able to drill into if they made this move, if they changed their behavior, or if they changed their service and they decide to work with you, what are they going to make that mean? And this is where most salespeople drop the ball. They immediately come in, look at my amazing car. Isn't it pretty? Don't you want to buy this car? Think of what you're going to drive, what it's going to feel like driving in this car. And they immediately start pushing, and they want to peddle whatever their product or service is. If you don't know how they're already influenced, you're going to have a really hard time influencing them down the road.
Right. You just covered a lot of stuff here, bro. I've made some notes.
Let's backtrack. Let's double click in.
Couple of things. The first thing you said was like the buyer today needs more information. And then I heard you say like the sales process has become more logical, which it kind of seems like, and then you talked about it, moving it to an emotional experience, that the buying process has to be an emotional experience. So somewhere in there, that seems like a bit of an oxymoron.
Let me clarify that one piece. So maybe not per...
I agree with you, by the way.
Not so much that they need more information, they need the right information.
Right. And
so
the
it's not so much a
information
volume piece.
And does the information have to align more to their emotions?
To their values, their emotions, and to the result, yes.
Right. So typically, I'm just kind of want to clarify, but my understanding would be that if you're going and you're looking at your sales system, how much of it is just logical information versus information that would gear towards the emotional experience of the buyer and create a different process that's not logical, that's more information given to the emotion. Am I framing that
great.
right?
No, yeah, great question. So percentage wise, our goal is to get 90% of the conversation is in the emotional zone, and then 10% would be in the logical zone. But here's the dynamics between the two. So if we're going down the road of emotion, sometimes we have to use logical pieces to unearth to get into the emotional phase. So example of this would be what we refer to as our discovery in a sales engagement. So a couple little rules on this. So first off, you want to do your discovery and not sell a damn thing. The biggest mistake I see actual salespeople make is they sell too soon, or they see a drop of water or a drop of blood in the water, and they're a shark and they're chomping. You have to learn restraint. Another way of looking at this, or another metaphor, you want to think of your sales engagement like a puzzle. And so your discovery is getting all the puzzle pieces, and you're trying to put the puzzle pieces together so you can really understand and appreciate what's going on in your prospect's world. And we may have to ask some logical questions like, hey, well, how long has this been going on? That's a logical question. The emotional question I want to back up right behind that is, well, how does that make you feel? Well, who else has been affected by this? Well, what does that mean? Well, how much longer can you really allow this to go on? Like I'm using a logical question to start the dialogue, but I'm very quickly going to use that so I can unearth the emotional meanings of what that actually translates to for that prospect's experience.
Right. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, so from that, when we move into a solution phase of what our product or service can do to solve their world, I'm still going to be talking all about the emotional piece and how that's going to translate and what that means for them from a meaning standpoint. The only time do I really go into logical pieces is when I actually go through here's what my product or service specifically does. And then obviously when you go into pricing, it's a very heady logical piece.
Right. Yeah. So I'm trying to like just frame this in a way that if we were to like role play, and I don't know if we pick a product like a car or a house or whatever it looks like. I mean, a house I think might be a lot easier to draw into emotion because you've got children, you've got wife, you got but what would be like some examples of questions in the discovery process that you might ask to really dig into the emotional aspect?
Yeah, so the first question is usually the first most important domino. So whatever your product or service is, I'm a big believer that you start off your discovery with, hey, I just want to ask you, with whatever your product or service is, what is the biggest challenge you're experiencing in your world right now, or your business, or whatever it is, in this specific area? So if it were a house, hey, great. In terms of you're looking to sell your house or you're looking to buy a house right now, I just have to ask you, what's the biggest challenge you've currently had with the current home you're living in? Because clearly you're looking to move to a new location. What about your existing home are you not liking? They're going to tell you the neighborhood, the schools, whatever it is, right? The size, we've got a baby. They're going to tell you exactly what that biggest challenge that they hang on to. That's the door into all those other pieces that you want to keep drilling deeper. Oh, well, tell me about the school system. Okay, well, what is it that you don't like about it? What are you really looking for? If it's a car, hey, you're here because you're looking to purchase a new car. I just have to ask you, what's the biggest challenge you're running up against with your existing car? What about it that are you not liking, and what are you looking to acquire in your next vehicle?
Right. So you're trying to dig into what is the is it the obstacle or is it the pain?
It's the challenge. It's the pain. It is the pain. Yeah. And so I want to start with the pain, and that's ultimately going to lead to, well, if we remedy that pain, well, then what does that look like? So I want to go to hell first, right? Then we're going to go to heaven. And we want to do that because we have to get the prospect to voice what the hell is. And again, salespeople usually, they will tell people what the hell is. And that's a big, big mistake. You cannot use your words. Whatever you associate to whatever you think that pain is going to be, it's a crapshoot. You may or may not use the language that they're associated to. So you've got to ask them. You've got to figure out from them, what is the hell that you're experiencing right now? And how long have you been experiencing it? And how long can you continue experiencing it? And what does that mean? Like, I want to open Pandora's box around the pain that they're in and the potential heaven that they could be experiencing should they change their behavior, and should they make that change with us.
Right. Got it. That makes sense. That's thank you for that. Yeah. So is discovery process, is that the very first step in the process that you guys coach, or have we skipped any?
We skipped a step, but it's all good. Okay. So first step is actually, let's go to the beginning. So the first step is actually your intro, or in our world of, if anyone who's been in the world of NLP. So we like pre-frame. So the intro or the pre-frame, what we really want to do there is we want to avoid a couple big pieces. One is we want to make sure we're not going to get time closed. So that intro piece would look something like this. So, hey, Dwayne, super excited to connect with you today. Hey, before we dive in, I just want to make sure you're good for a full hour. That's what I've got carved out for our appointment time. I just want to make sure we don't have anything that's going to infringe on that, because I'd hate to dig into your world and have to cut our engagement short. All right, so I'm going to make sure we're not going to get time closed. Yep. Right behind that, depending on what your offering is, but right behind that, I'm going to make sure that all decision makers are present. So if let's say I've got a B2B type of a setup, I'm going to go, hey, Dwayne, just out of curiosity, is there anybody else in your company that should be on this call with us today? I just want to make sure that I've got all the pertinent minds. I want to make sure I have all the right eyeballs here so that we can help you solve the challenges you're facing. But I want to make sure we have the right team here on the call.
Okay, this is the spot where, like, I think a lot of salespeople get stuck. We see this in one of our businesses, a pretty high intensive sales business, B2B, B2C, and they proceed forward without all members. What would you recommend if they don't have all the decision makers?
So great question. And it doesn't mean that if they don't have all the decision makers there that you have to reschedule, but we want to test the waters to find out, should we? We also want to show them, hey, I'm going to be basically having a real dialogue with you today, and there might be a decision-making moment in time that we have to engage on. So if they say, hey, I'm missing my CFO, he should probably be here. Great. I'm going to qualify it. Is it mission critical that they're here, or is this something that you could take back to them, or is this something that if it serves you in the company, you can make a decision on your own? I want to qualify right out of the gates if there's somebody who's not here. If that person goes, oh, I absolutely have to take it to them, and I don't make any decisions without them, I'm going to then say, hey, would it be best for you guys and for your company if we reschedule and have both of you on? Because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to share with you, a ton of information. We're going to dig into your world. You're going to have to then go back and relay that back to them. And it ends up being like the game of telephone. I just want to make sure nothing's missed. Do we absolutely have to have them on, or is this something that we can drive forward on? Right. So I want to find out. Again, I don't want to assume anything. I want them to tell me what has to happen, because if it doesn't fall in alignment with my process, I'm going to push them into my process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're kind of heading off an objection. Like you're really qualifying whether or not, okay, what's the objection I'm going to get at the end of this? I'm going to spend an hour or whatever it is, a half an hour with somebody, or maybe it's a 5-minute phone call or a 10-minute phone call. And at the end of the 10-minute phone call, you're going to get an objection with like, I got to go talk to my wife, or I got to go talk to the CFO, or I got to go talk to whoever. And so, if you don't mind me asking, I'm curious, and not that I want to get stuck in here, because we'll probably deal with this with objections, but you're walking in, decision maker, they're collecting some information. They've got somebody that's going to be involved in making the decision. And so do you recommend at this stage, how to handle it, or, well, at the end, how do you pre-frame this?
Yeah. So the goal is to reduce as many objections as humanly possible. So our process and our step-by-step, and as we lay it out, you'll see how that's able to flow. What is important is, and this is really critical, if anybody who's listening, if this is the only golden nugget you whip out your pen and paper for, this is what you're going to grab. Objections is where most salespeople contract. Physically, emotionally, psychically, all the above, right? So when an objection comes up, usually the salesperson goes, crap, now I have to deal with this. Now, if and when you're prepared for objections, you want your sales team to be like, woohoo, I'm excited for the objections. Because if they know how to handle them, if they know how to communicate to them, they're gonna seek them out. So you'll notice right away, I want to go straight for what is there an objection that's right here, and I'm not going to contract right out of the gates, which is what most salespeople do. Is they kind of go, "Is there somebody that also should be here?" And they get inferior.
Right.
You don't want that. It should be, you want to stay in a space of, I'm excited to help you rock and roll, and we're not afraid of anything that's going to come up, because we're just going to have an honest conversation, man to man, or man to woman, or woman to woman, or whatever it is. So within that, objections shouldn't be seen as something to contract on. Additionally, we have a very different perspective of objections. And since you've been in the Tony space, you'll appreciate this. We see objections as a limiting belief. Okay. So it's not some unsurmountable thing, or it's not a barrier. It's no, this is a belief that my prospect has that's actually the doorway to the solution that they want. We just have to have a dialogue, and we got to navigate through it. So my sales team, the people that we work with, I hate to say, they eat objections for breakfast, but it's this element of, we welcome the objections. We want them to happen, because now we can have an honest dialogue in our sales engagement. So your question is very, very, it's brilliant, because yes, you need to know objections at the end of your engagement, because that's when the bulk will rear their head. But don't be surprised if they come out of the gates right out of the chute.
Yeah, I feel like that's when you want them to come out, right? Because then at least you know what you're dealing with. So if we go back to, the intro, so watch for the time close. Are all the decision makers present? What would be the third step in that? Yeah.
So the third piece into the intro, or the pre-frame piece, is actually setting the stage for what's going to happen in your engagement. So I usually like to say, hey, there's two main outcomes I have for our engagement today. The first one, the obvious piece, is if we have a solution, if we have a product, if we have some way of helping improve your world, I want to make sure I can make that available to you today. Okay, so I always use that as the first. So I'm taking the wind out of their sails of like, I'm afraid you're going to sell me. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Like, that's what we're having an engagement to see if I can help you solve your problems. Right. But I'm framing it in a way that's, if we have this thing, then I want to make sure I can make it available to you. Okay. Yep. So the equivalent of this would be like, if you go to a doctor's office, it's like, hey, if we find out you've got cancer and I've got a solution to cure your cancer, like, can I make that available to you? So we're getting permission right out of the chute.
Right. Yeah.
The second piece, and this is where I really like to frame things up, is I go, I want to make, now secondarily, I really want to find out where you are currently at, where you've been, and most importantly, where you desire to be and what's triggering the gap. So whatever my product or service is, I'm going to tie it into that in some way, shape, or form, right? So if you're looking to purchase a home, I want to see where you've currently been living, what you've loved about that, what you haven't liked about it. But most importantly, I want to see where it is that you ultimately would like to live and get a lot of clarity around that.
Right. Makes sense.
Cool.
Yep.
Then now, depending on the service or the product, and so in our world, if we have a expertise or an intangible, or if we're a coach or an expert or a consultant, I personally, and actually you can do this with a lot of different offers, but I like to position myself as a coach. So it looks something like this. So it would be something to the effect of, so Dwayne, before we dig in, I just got to ask you, does a good coach tell you what you need to hear or what you want to hear?
Right. Obviously what I need to hear.
Yeah. So do I have permission today to speak from my heart? Even though some of the questions might seem like they're out in left field, as long as you and I are both aligned that it's for the purposes of helping you and your business get to the next level.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Okay, beautiful. So that's the intro. Now there's one piece that I did, depending on what your offer is. Sometimes I'll ask people, and this is really just more of a, I'll call it an optimizer into the sales process. If you have somebody else who's booking your appointments, so let's say you have a BDR, somebody who's teeing up meetings for you, I will always ask one additional question in that intro, which is, so after I say what my two outcomes are, I'll qualify and I'll say, as far as what you're hoping to gain from today, what are you hoping to take from today's engagement? Right. Now you'll notice the language is really specific. I'm positioning them as a taker. What are you hoping to take from today? The presupposition is that I'm a giver, so I'm weaving in reciprocity purely on my framework. So again, just to recap that last piece, because I don't want that to get too confusing for people. If you've got somebody else booking your meetings for you, or if somebody's booking, let's say they're booking through a Calendly link or something off of the internet,
yep.
You don't know what that client's expectation is because you weren't the one that set it. So if you have some expectation that you're going to exceed your client's expectations, why not just ask them what their expectation is before you even start?
That's a good point. You know what? That's a really good point. And I question how many people are really out there doing that, asking what the expectation is versus really more focusing on themselves and what they're selling and what they have to offer, which takes us back to our initial conversation about, the logical process of the sales engagement.
Yeah. And they might tell you an objection. Oh, I'm sniffing this out for my CFO because he's really the head honcho. Or, I'm exploring, I'm researching you and 4 other competitors. I mean, you have no idea what they're going to tell you. So it's a really powerful question to say, hey, like, is there anything you want to share with me before we dig in? It's like, oh, actually XYZ. And so again, you can address that before you even go further. So it's just a really good stopgap.
Cool. So is that the whole intro? I mean, there's a lot going on there.
It is, but it's pretty short. I mean, it literally is, hey, Dwayne, my name's Brooke. I'm super excited to be chatting with you today. Before we dig in, I want to make sure you're good for the full hour.
Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
no, maybe so.
100%.
Cool. And just out of curiosity, is there any other decision makers that should be on the call with us today? Is there anybody else that's in your orbit on your team that would be beneficial to have on our call?
Well, other than my wife that makes all the decisions.
That's why you're still married. Good man.
Right.
All right, beautiful. And in terms of today's session, today's interaction, I have 2 major outcomes for us. First, I really want to see where you at, where are you looking to get to. I want to make sure that if we have anything on our side of the table that could help you and your business, I want to make sure that I can make that available to you.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Okay, cool. Now, most importantly, I want to see where you're currently at, where you've been, and what's triggering the gap that's preventing you from getting to that next level.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. As far as what you're hoping to take from today's engagement, what are you hoping to walk away with today?
I mean, really, I think you just said it. I'm interested to see how you guys can bridge the gap of, where we're struggling right now with this process. So
beautiful. Well, we'll definitely do that. As far as before we dig in and start to poke around in your world, I just have to ask this question because I think it's really pertinent for the purpose of our conversation. But Dwayne, does a good coach tell you what you need to hear or what you want to hear?
They tell you what you need to hear.
Beautiful. So do I have permission today to speak from my heart, to be totally transparent, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, even if it potentially ruffles your feathers, as long as we're both aligned in helping you take your business to the next level?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yep, I appreciate that.
All right, beautiful. Well, let's ask the most important question. What is the biggest challenge you're facing in your business right now? So I'll hit pause. Yeah. So you'll notice that's the whole, we gave a lot of pieces to it, but it took us maybe 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, and clearly, obviously, you've got that memorized. It's down pat. And how much of that is a component to the process?
I mean, it's like saying if you play football, how many times do you need to snap the ball and run, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, to something that you mentioned earlier on in the conversation, don't leave your sales engagements to be your practice sessions, right? It's just your sales engagement should not be when you're practicing. You shouldn't be getting stronger through more sales engagements, although we want more sales engagements to happen, but you've got to be doing the practice before you get to game day. If you come to game day and you're like, hey, I've never picked up the ball, like, oh, I run that way, cool. Like you're going to get your ass handed to you.
What would you recommend? So we've recently changed our process in our business. Like we don't let a salesperson needs to pass a practical test in order to be able to be out in the field and dealing with customers face to face. We're still old school. Like one of our businesses is like it's very face to face. It's when you're doing we're doing cold calling. We're out there creating territories, blah blah blah, and they have to pass a practical exam.
So yes, and so it depends on the structure of your business. Depends how much bandwidth you have. It depends on the stage of where your business is as well. Which is we could probably do 4 more episodes just just on that. But the way I've looked at things, with every sales team I've managed and I've overseen, every single person that wants to come on my sales team has to do a script out before we actually hire them.
Really?
So it's not that they have to do a script out after they've been hired and after they've shown a proficiency and after they've gone through full training. I actually recommend putting them through the gauntlet before you bring them on.
Okay, let's talk about that. That's cool. That's a really cool idea. I love that. We'll get back to the discovery process. So we'll just take a little break here from the intro to the discovery process. But let's talk about recruiting, because that's probably the initial step to the whole thing.
It definitely is. So yeah, with recruiting, so I'm going to give you a couple pieces that have just saved so much time and so many headaches and just so much aggravation downstream. So first off, when it comes to recruiting, I usually request a few different things before I'll even interview somebody. So right out of the gate, obviously their resume. I also request a 30-second video on why they believe they're the best candidate for the position. And then the reason for that one, by the way, this is really, really critical. You and I have both heard, or we've probably even said this sentiment many times over, but the way that people show up to most things is how they show up to everything.
Yep.
I cannot tell you how many people who I looked at their resume and I went, whoa, these guys have an incredible background. They've got all this experience. They've got the education. They've got all the, the bells and whistles and the certifications. And then I see them on a 30-second video. I'm like, you're trying to get the job, and this is how you showed up for a video. And you got to re-record it. You could have edited it. You could have done whatever you needed to do to show me the best version of yourself for this one moment in time. If they don't put the energy and the time into that, to me, that's an immediate red flag. Don't even stop. Don't even mess around with that person. Okay, especially today too, because so many people, especially with AI and all these other services, they can outsource their resume, and most people, I think it's something like less than 20% are actually crafting their own resume now.
Yeah, wow, that doesn't surprise me.
And then the next piece is most of the stuff that's on it's total BS. So that 30-second video for me is huge, because I want to see how is this person going to show up for me as the person who's going to hire them? Because guess what? They'll probably show up at 50% of that for your prospect.
Right.
Okay, so that's the second piece. The third part of that, the other part of the video, and this is always a fascinating one. If they can't figure out how to get you a copy of their video, that's another big red flag. Okay, it sounds overly simplistic, but if they can't put it in a Dropbox and send you a Dropbox link, or if they can't upload it to YouTube and send you a YouTube link, like, Houston, we have a problem. And I can't tell you how many people have been like, I'm the best salesperson that there ever was. And then they buckle because they hit one little roadblock of sending you a video.
Right.
Right. Okay. So if they're going to be dealing with objections and they're going to be dealing with people telling them no, or get out of my office, or whatever it is, like, if they can't do the video, just see that as a red flag. The third piece, and I'm a big fan of personality assessments. So we request that somebody fill out a DISC personality assessment. Within that, anybody, whatever their DISC personality profile is, I've seen every single profile has been a top producer. So I don't put so much weight per se on their actual disc score. It does tell me how they're going to how they're going to play and what their style might be. But what I'm really after is their values. So when it comes to recruiting, I want to know, what are their values? What's their driver? Are they economically driven? Do they want to do good for the planet? Like, depends on what my product is. I want to know, what are their values? Will the fuel that drives them to behave, is that in alignment with what my product is?
Right. That makes sense.
Okay. So those are the real good filters out of the gates, right? Because it requires a little bit of time out of them. So first off, the resume, they're hitting copy, paste, send, and they're looking for a job. Are they willing to take a little blip of time to tell me why they're badass, right? Are they willing to do that video? Now, what I'll also tell you, the people who did the best videos were always my top producers. So some of these people in the world of Robbins, like the ones who have absolutely crushed it. They literally, one of the gals who was there, she went into studio and she specifically put a book of Tony's in the background, and she printed out little pieces that she put in the frame as like anchors. She made sure the lighting was all good. She edited it with music, and she blew the doors on anybody else that's ever come into that organization.
That's awesome.
Right? Because that's how she just shows up. Now, the personality profile is that third layer where I'm going, okay, resume looks good. They kicked ass on their video. They can communicate well. And then that third piece is, what is their fuel? Because I need to know how I'm going to manage them, and I need to know what makes them tick. So that's my first hurdle. And what I'll tell you is, there's a lot of people that just want to send resumes because they're in resume send mode. That's going to weed out a lot of people who won't take the time to do the video or take the time to put together their personality profile.
Yeah. Yeah. You do the personality profile before you even speak to them.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. Yeah, because if I'm looking at it going, okay, I've got a DC. So let's say I have an attorney profile, right? And I'm going to put them in a sales position. They're going to have 1 foot on the gas, 1 foot on the brake. I know that out of the gates, that's going to make it really tough for that specific seat. So instead of wasting their time, instead of wasting my time, we'll move through.
Yep, makes sense.
Now, the second hurdle is, we do the first interview, and that one's usually more of, like, I'm getting all the skeletons out of the closet. So if they meet all the criteria, resume, video, and the personality profile, my first interview with them is, let me tell you why it's so hard to work here. Okay, what most employers do is they want to tell them, this is the best place ever to work. Let me tell you why. I'd rather get all the skeletons out of the closet and see how they play with that information.
That's a great idea, man.
Because then
we don't do that.
We don't have to worry about 6 months from now where they're like, you never told me that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, that was actually the first thing I ever told you. Right? And I want to see how they overcome the fear of whatever that might be. Are they going to buckle, or are they like, no, I'm made for this? Yeah. Right? So it's just a really good filter.
That's buddy, that's a great piece. Well, the work environment is so competitive right now to get good people. I would say even I sometimes feel, and I know a lot of other business people that I speak to, feel like, such hard competition to find a good individual. And so you sometimes can find yourself interviewing easy, which only lends to having more difficult conversations down the road.
Well, let's call it what it is. You're interviewing desperate.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I need a human. I need to put somebody who can fog a mirror in this seat to get this outcome. Right? And it kind of goes back to that, hire, slow, fire, fast concept. But yeah, don't buckle on your standards and your values, even when you're in a tough market where it's hard to get really good quality help. Like, there are good people that are out there, but you've got to make them jump through some of those earlier hoops. So this also streamlines, if they're having to jump through a couple extra hoops on step 1, your step 2 gets a lot easier because you're not going to have as much of the riffraff because they wouldn't have done the first couple steps.
Right. So when you talk about systems, just while we're on this conversation, you're trying to fill a seat for a sales position. There's lots of businesses out there who are like, look, we need people to sell our product or our service or whatever we're doing. And we've got empty seats, and an empty seat is just lost revenue. You literally can translate it into revenue that's not coming into the business, or should be coming into the business, right? If you got 10, go ahead.
The good salesperson can transform your business.
Right.
A bad salesperson can bleed out your marketing spend and kill your business.
Right.
So and this is where it can be tricky as a business owner, right? It's like we as business owners, most of us are artists, right? That we see the vision, we see the opportunity. And so we're going after this thing, we want to go for the top of Everest, but we also have to be a realist too. Like bringing the wrong person along with your team can also pull you off the cliff and kill you.
Right.
So in an attempt to get to the top of Everest, don't bring somebody that's going to pull you off the cliff.
So what would you say to the business owner out there that has a seat or 2 or 3 empty seats, and they're, either turning them over constantly with average salespeople or below average salespeople, and could pull you off the cliff, as you say, what would you say to them in terms of you used the word earlier, desperation?
Yeah. So two things. One is raise your standards to get on the team. Like that's just kind of the obvious that we've already hit. The second is raise your standards as the leader so that the right people would want to be on your team and they wouldn't want to leave. So you do those two things, you're going to get better quality people, and then you're also going to have a way better time with retention, and you're going to have a way more coachable culture to support that effort.
Right. Yeah. Good advice, man. Yeah. Awesome advice. Should we get back to like the discovery process?
Yeah. Well, I want to button up one piece on the recruiting part, and then we can jump back over.
Yeah, no, please.
So on the recruiting piece, step 1 is through the hurdles. Step 2 is that initial interview where we share what we basically open the kimono. Step 3 is we want to send them your sales structure strategy along with a little walkthrough video, like a Loom or something that you can walk them through what your sales process is, or process for you guys, right? And then within that, the third engagement should be them selling you on the exact product or service. So you want to see how good of a job did they do with what you gave them. So my rule was always, if they score above a 90%, hire them.
Right.
Right. That's just the easy way. You give them the hurdles, you tell them what's going on, you give them an opportunity to show up. I usually give them maximum 1 week from the point of the interview to the script out. If they're like, oh, I need more time than that, nope, no dice.
Right.
Because we want hungry.
Do you ever use like techniques? I've heard of this before, where somebody will go to apply and then you reject them through the process to see if they come back. Like I've never done that myself, but I've heard of it.
Yes, I know who came up with that strategy. I'm not a big fan, just mainly because it just doesn't align with how I like to lead and how I like to coach people up. There's definitely people that I know who have played that game. And I think, to your point, right, if you've got a saturation of staff and you can play that game, maybe it would work different. I just don't go to bed sleeping well, playing that game with people. People are looking for jobs. They're wanting to provide for their family. I just don't feel good pulling on their heartstrings to that level of kicking them,
Yep. Yeah, no, it's an emotional process. I mean, one of the things that I like to do in an interview process is I always give honest feedback, both positive and constructive, at the end of every interview process. So I don't do a ton of interviews anymore, but I always make sure, like, I'm like, hey, here's what I like, and here's what I'm a little bit confused with. As a result, we won't be moving you through the process. Like, I let them know right there and then, or I'm a little confused with this and I want to move you through the process, and here's some of the things that we need to have a conversation about in the future, or when you move them on to the next person for the interview process. Like, we have a 7 or 8 step process. But I mean, some of this information, dude, this is unbelievable. This is great. And for the people who are listening to the show, this is going to be a game changer.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I love the fact that you give them constructive criticism as well as acknowledge pieces, because you can see how do they receive positive feedback, and you can also see how do they squirm. Giving them that constructive criticism, you can see certain people they've never been told that their doesn't stink, or that it does stink, I should say.
Right.
It's always a really good indicator of how people will play.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for circling on that on the recruiting side. To be honest with you, I didn't even think about it until you brought it up. So appreciate your insight.
It's a nice little left turn. You want to jump back over to discovery?
Sure. Dude, listen, I got to thank you. And for the people who are listening, like, this stuff's gold, man. Like, you're giving a lot of trade secrets away here. And so, I'm at the end, we'll talk about this, but, for those of you who are, have a product that you're selling, which is all of you, or you're a business owner, and you don't have these systems in place, you need to be listening to this. You need to be writing this down. But I think honestly, you got to have a coach. You got to have somebody that can walk you through this stuff. And that's why I appreciate you being on here, Brooke, because that's what you guys do.
Yeah, no, and if you can't tell, I love this stuff. This is the
I know
this is the piece of the puzzle. It's so much fun,
dude. That's why I wanted to have you on the show because it's like I know how passionate you are, and I also know how authentic you are. Like I know how heart-centered you are, and how you come from that space. This is not about you're not trying to make money. You're doing that. You're doing me a favor. I appreciate this, but you just generally approach everything from a heart-centered place. And that's why, dude, that's why I love you so much. It's why I've always had a ton of respect for you.
No, I appreciate it, man. No, it's fun stuff. And the cool part is when you're selling something that you really believe in and you can stand behind, you can authentically sell, and you can sell from a place of integrity, and you don't have to do the old school tactics. And speaking of which, jumping back into discovery, it's a good little segue.
Right.
All right. So we went through intro, we took a little left turn, we went into recruiting. We're coming back to center. So we have your introduction, then you have your discovery. Just a couple key pieces with discovery. So as we talked about the most critical question to start with, which is what's the biggest challenge you're facing with whatever your offer is going to be. I'm just going to give you kind of a high level, and we have a whole full training on how to do discovery. But the key components, the key rules, number one is you're not allowed to sell anything in discovery.
Got it.
Okay. So if somebody goes, oh, my marriage is struggling. Oh, let me tell you why my product or service is so great. Blah, 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 blah. Like, don't do that. Right. So you want to nail down 3 reasons why they need your product or service now. So that's the big rule. So number 1, can't sell anything in discovery. Number 2 is you want to drill down to where you find 3 solid reasons they need your product or service and why they need it now.
Got it.
Okay. So since you asked the math question earlier, 40 to 50% of your time in a sales engagement should be happening in the discovery window.
40 to 50%? Okay.
Yep. So from there, once you have those key pieces, we have what's called a turn close. Okay. So the turn close is where we're just testing the waters. So it'd be something to the effect of, so Dwayne, based on what you shared with me today, it sounds like your business is really struggling in this area, this area, this area. It's been going on for 3 years to the tune of X amount of millions of dollars. And should we remedy that, it sounds like this is what would be created, right? You'd have freedom. You'd have all whatever the hell you shared with me, right? So does that sound pretty accurate? Okay, so this is the test close. So I'm playing it back. I'm testing it. As soon as you say, yep, that's absolutely correct. My next question, this is the one that takes a little bit of chops, a little bit of cojones. So Dwayne, if I could show you a way to make that real today, would you be interested in what I have to share with you?
That's a good question, bro.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we got to test. We got to find out. They might go, no. Okay, great. We missed something. Go back into discovery. Then you can literally.
So can you repeat that question again? Because I want everybody to get that.
Yeah. So, and I'll give you kind of the packaging, and then I'll give you the languaging. So okay. The packaging is we have to highlight back and again, use their language. These are the 3 things you just shared with me. This is the hell if you don't remedy it. This is the heaven if you do. Am I on track? Am I pacing with you? We're giving them a chance to say, hey, no, there's other pieces that are missing, or no, you need this or whatever. Then here's the specific languaging of it. So Dwayne, just out of curiosity, if I could show you a way to make that real today, if I could show you how to remedy that problem and create that heaven, would you be interested in what I have to share with you?
100% I would.
Okay, cool. If they say no, go back to discovery. If it's a yes, great, we're moving forward.
How do you transition them back into discovery after that? If they say no, say, no, I'm not 100% sure.
I have a momentary lapse of inferiority. All right. So what I literally will do, and I'll do it to the point that hopefully they can hear it, but I'll hit my forehead. And I'm not kidding. I'll literally hit my forehead and hopefully they hear it and I go, Dwayne, what did I miss? Because you just shared with me X, Y, and Z that's been going on for this long. And I'd have to imagine like this has massive implications. What else haven't you shared with me? Or what question did I not ask with regards to whatever?
Right. What I missed.
So it's a momentary lapse. I go inferior. What did I not ask? What am I missing? And then I go back into, great, let's probe.
Got it. Makes sense.
Cool. Great question. All right. So all systems go. We did our intro. We did our discovery. We got our 3 reasons why they need us now. We know all the pieces there. We tested the waters. Now we're going to move into what we call our solution.
Sorry, can I ask you one more question on the discovery? That just popped into my head. I apologize. So if you're, you were talking earlier about emotion, taking it from logic to emotion. And so many people, like to stay in the logic, like it's safe. Logic zone is safe. They don't have to get vulnerable. They're not talking about their emotion. And, some people could be, I don't know, you're buying a house and you're moving, it's like, well, we don't like the neighborhood. And it's just like, well, and how far do you try to dig into the emotion of why they don't like the neighborhood? Like, and in my head, it's like, well, maybe my wife got assaulted or was threatened or felt fearful in the neighborhood that we were living in. I got to get her out of here because my job to be, her savior or whatever. And, I'm obviously digging in. But there's that kind of emotion versus there's the logical kind of surface level of, well, it's not really a safe neighborhood.
Okay, so you gave 2 very different answers within that. So I want to get to the meaning. The meaning is everything. So you'll notice in the one example, you're like, oh, as the protector, I need to do what's right. Like that's the meaning. Yeah. The other one is it's not a safe neighborhood. That's a surface level.
Right.
So you have to have some degree of IQ between your ears to listen. And like, this isn't just asking questions and them just communicating. Like you have to be present and you have to hold space for them. And ultimately you have to get down to the meaning. So it would look something like this. So Dwayne, so you mentioned that you want to move because the neighborhood's not safe. Like, what does that actually look like? What does that feel like? Right now you're going to tell me what it looks like, what it feels like. Cool. Well, if you continue to stay there, like, what does that actually translate to? Like what kind of risk are we going to be in, or what kind of risk would your kids be in if they wanted to continue playing outside? Okay. And how long has it been like that? Okay. Well, is it to the point where you guys need to get out of there like this week, or is this something you can stay there for another year before it's really an issue? So I want to get to the surface level is going to be the doorway into, well, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that mean? And then I want to know how long have you been there? How long can you stay there? Mm. Why am I asking those questions? Number one is I'm going with logical to start. I'm digging into the emotional. I got to get to the meaning. The timeline gives me my barometer of urgency.
Leverage.
Yep. And if I don't have it, it's like, well, if there's another shooting that happens next week, does that speed up your timeline? I can see if I can artificially create leverage.
Right.
So great freaking question though. That's huge. And the discovery, you've got to start, and just know this, whatever answer they ever give you, that's going to be rote memorization. That's the loop that's playing in their head, and they're conditioned to spit out whatever the heck they say as layer 1. So you already know layer 1 is just going to be surface every time. Yep. It doesn't matter who it is. Right. So you have to go 2, 3, 4, sometimes 20 levels deep, depending on what your product or service is, or depending on how freaking stubborn your prospect might be.
Well, and yeah, I think that this is where this is where you make the difference in people's lives. Like to what you said earlier, it's like, you've got to get it to emotional. We stay in logic level, but all buying decisions and most decisions in life are made at some level of emotion. And so, I think this is key. I love the one question the way you said, what is this transition into? I think you used the word transition into. I thought that was a really good language, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll notice too, part of why I asked, does a good coach tell you need to hear what you want to hear? We now have the permission to ask those emotional questions. Whereas if you don't get that framework to begin with, it can feel funky when you're like, well, how long has your wife been cheating on you? Right? It's like, why are you asking me that question? Like, we're talking about buying a house, like whatever it might be. But if you get that coaching frame to begin with, you can afford to screw up on your questions because they gave you the green light.
Yeah. It's cool. No, it's great. This is really good information for people. Great. It's good information for me. Yeah, I love this. Okay, so now we're into, what's the next? Third?
So we got intro, we got discovery, we've got our sharp angle or our turn close. Now we're moving into solution. So the solution should be whatever your framework, whatever you're offering, whatever that is, we need to present it in a way where it's a tool, it's a framework, or it's something you can put in a wheelbarrow and walk out the front door with. So if you have a tangible, this is pretty pretty simple because you can go, look, based on what you've shared with me, these are the challenges you're running up against. Let me share with you what it is that we've created and show you whatever your thing is that solves their problem. But here's the important piece. You have to present it in a way that makes sense to your consumer, not in a way that makes you look smart as the salesperson.
Right.
And again, this is where I see a lot of people, they use crazy funky language. They make it too complex. They make it look like a ton of work, thinking that that's what the person wants is more time, or they want whatever. Make your solution really freaking simple. Part of why we have the rule, you've got to have 3 reasons they need your product or service in discovery. It's because our brain goes 1, 2, 3, too many. I can't deal with it. Most people go after one reason and the prospect goes, oh, let me think about it. What they're really saying is, I could probably figure that shit out on my own.
Right. Yeah. You don't want it to be too complex, but you don't want it to be too simple. And it has to represent value.
Yes, absolutely has to represent value. And here's the key piece. Your solution needs to be simple. So their problem, big, scary, too much to tackle. Solution, ooh, easy, simple, right? I get it. If they're confused, they're not going to move forward. So it's really imperative that your solution or whatever you're presenting to them is a very clean, simple way. Now, after that, and again, we can open Pandora's box if there's 50 different ways you could present solution to somebody, right? Depending on what their product is. But after you've presented your solution within that, we have to test again. Okay, so we're going to something to the effect of, hey, Dwayne, earlier you shared with me XYZ problem led to this kind of pain. This is what you're really going after. Can you see why our product or our solution, why so many of our clients are getting insane results and how it directly solves the problems that you shared with me earlier?
Yeah,
cool.
100%.
Now, here's the important piece. Other than the investment, is there anything that would prevent you from moving forward with us today for test closing?
Yeah, I mean, no. Other than at the beginning, I did say like my wife does have a bit of a input on some of these things.
And just based on where we're at this point in time, if the price was in the right zone, is this something you'd still have to run past the misses, or if the price was in the right wheelhouse for you, it's something you could move forward with?
I'd probably want to swing it to her.
Fair enough, right? So again, testing, secondary closing there just to see is there any wiggle room. Okay, now I'm going to go into what we would refer to as our program, okay, or our product. Now I'm going to lay out exactly what my product actually is. So should you decide to move forward with us today, here's exactly what it is. Boom, 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 boom. Make your product or whatever it is that you're providing, again, very simple. Where this is different than solutions, we're giving them a framework or we're giving them, here's what the thing is. Our program is the specificity. We're now moving into the logical part of the conversation. Okay. So that your product, this is what it is. A, B, C, D. This is exactly what comes with it. Other than the price, any questions on what our product or service actually is?
No questions whatsoever. No.
Cool. So the last thing is price. So then we lay out the pricing structure, whatever your pricing is. I've got a whole framework around pricing, but that, depending on what people have as their price, usually is what it is. If you're open to changing it, I have recommendations from a negotiation standpoint. But
yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that, like, and not to get into price too much because there's, we could go down one rabbit hole and there's 20 other people listening that it doesn't apply whatsoever. But from the perspective of setting price, many people from a psychology standpoint have trouble with, they want to set a price that they feel is valuable, that they don't want to haggle or negotiate, and what is your take? If there's some parameters or some things to consider when you are looking at setting your pricing strategy and what you're willing to do. I'd be curious on your
so the value. So this is some old school sales language, right? The value has to exceed the cost. So that's kind of like benchmark number one. Number two, when it comes to price negotiation, I'm a big fan of, we want to have the emotional release with that first price point. So whatever your highest price point is, hit them with the highest tier first and drop your price as you go. So it's like, hey, if you have a service-based thing, let's say it's a monthly nut. If you want to pay monthly installments, here's how much it is per month, and here's how much you'd spend over the course of 6 months, a year, whatever it is. Option two, and this is actually where the pricing, I look at pricing as more of a negotiation tool versus a true science. When I look at pricing, I'm thinking in terms of terms or or price reduction, right? So we either have terms or we've got our price. Like we're going to bend in one way or another from a negotiation standpoint. You want more flexible terms, you're going to pay more. You want the price to be lower, the terms are going to go into my favor. So that's really where I like to look at the pricing juxtaposition, is more from that scope,
Yep.
right? Now, what I'm a big fan of, and I'll just kind of share this in terms of pricing. If I'm going to go into a negotiation, I want to have 3 price points if possible. So let's say we have a service that somebody's signing up for, and there's a monthly fee that's associated to it. I would want to have a monthly payment option. I would want to have a paid in full for the year option that should hopefully be less than if they went monthly. I'd love to have a third option in my back pocket, which might be the paid in full for the year, but maybe we split into half this month, half next month. I need negotiating power. So when it comes to pricing, I love to tell people, this is kind of a little trick within the close. It's, hey, so Dwayne, should you decide to move forward with us today, there's 3 different ways you can do that. I'm going to give you 2, and I'm not going to give you the third until you request it.
Oh, why is that?
I want to see what kind of decision-making process you make. So I'm going to go, hey, if I was in your shoes, here's what I would do. I'm going to tell you the first thing I would do is always, if I was in your shoes, that option. Then I'm going to give you a price juxtaposition as the second option. Okay. So you might have better terms, but maybe it's the higher price point, or I'm going to play those 2. I'm going to hang on to the third. And the reason for that is this. If you're somebody that needs options, you're going to request that third option. If you don't, you already heard me say, if I was in your shoes or if I was in your company, this is the route I would go. So if you don't need that third option, I'm not going to bring it into the conversation yet. I also, at this point in time, based on our role play here, you told me you need to chat with the missus. I still have some negotiating power. You go to the missus, you come back, oh, she said it's too expensive. Well, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Now I have another tool in the conversation, whereas if I put it all on the table to begin with, I got no other tools and I can't bend should there be an objection that comes up down the line.
Yep, makes sense. And do you ever go out when it comes to pricing, there's, the friends and family, not friends and family, but this, like, the hardcore negotiators get a better deal than the people. Do you ever subscribe to any of that kind of stuff?
It's a semi-loaded question only in this regard. So we've talked about 2 different groups, right? You have solopreneur who's possibly doing the sales themselves, and then you have got a sales team. It's a hell of a lot easier for a sales team to basically go, this is the price options, this is what I can do. Like, I can talk to my manager to see whatever's there, and then they can navigate there. If you're a solopreneur, you are the manager. You're the one who put the pricing in motion. Yeah. It can be a little bit trickier. A big piece of that, honestly, is your emotional association to your price. And that might sound like woo-woo languaging, but it's really a matter of how associated are you to the problem that they have, the pricing that you charge, and them going, is there anything else you can do? Can you wiggle on that price at all? I can't. Based on our costs, based on our margin, the price is what it is. Now, let me redirect you back. You told me this is the problem you're having, which is a $3 million problem. What can we do to help you get to that place where you can pull the trigger on this so we can solve your problem? So it really does come down to your emotional association to that price point. If you go inferior, you're screwed.
Right. And then that's as the solopreneur or the salesperson, right? Person that's selling the product or service. Where do you draw back the emotional kind of position? Like we talked about, we used an example of an unsafe neighborhood, buying a house, all that kind of stuff. Where do you draw back into the emotional if they get really stuck in trying to make a decision? Do you draw back to the emotional driver that's driving this whole thing?
Yes. Yeah. And this is now you'll really see where the coaching framework on the front comes into play. Because if somebody goes into their emotional space or they're stuck in that, I need to think about it, or it's the money, or I got to talk to somebody else, or whatever it is. You can say, hey, earlier in the conversation, you gave me permission to have the hard conversation, even if it was uncomfortable. This is that moment of discomfort, and I want to have a real heart-to-heart, honest conversation with you. You just spent 45 minutes sharing with me, paint the picture back. And you told me that you really want this thing that's here in the future. The only thing that's standing in the way right now is your stinking thinking. It's your fear around whatever they gave you as the objection. What really needs to happen to move through that fear so we can get you the results you want? because I've got all the certainty in the world and I've got all the clients with their testimonials and their social proof to back it up. The only thing right now in this moment that's preventing you from getting what you want is your current fear that's popping up right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
So it's very different than the old school. What do you mean you got to talk to your wife? You need to nut up and that whole dialogue, right?
Listen, I have a question. Where do you think AI takes this interaction in the next, 2 to, I don't even, I could almost say 6 months, the way this is exploding. I don't know how much, you guys are utilizing AI and where you see it going. I'm a bit curious on your insight.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Literally, the reason I was late to our show a little bit earlier today, was wrapping up a podcast, and it was literally on AI in this space. And it was a fascinating dialogue. But the way, and I have to agree with the gentleman that we interviewed for it, but AI we see as a tool, just like we'd look at the internet, or just like we'd look at, back in the day when it was email. Like, did email kill the postal service? To some big degree, it did, right? Did the world become stupider when we had, internet come into play? In some ways, no. In some ways, yes. So I'm looking at AI as a very similar dynamic. If you're not using it as a tool, if you're using it as your end all be all, you're, in my opinion, foolish. I look at AI as something that gets you into the red zone with many of the different pieces. So when we're looking at marketing as an example, can you leverage AI to write ad copy? Well, yeah. Is it going to give you the best ad copy on the planet? Like, no, it's going to take a framework and a structure. It's going to help you save 75 to 90% of the time. You're still going to have somebody who's there to help you button that up. The conversation prior, we look at AI as being like a junior copywriter. It's not the one who's making the final sign off. When it comes to image generation and some of those pieces, or video generation, it's going to save you a crap ton of time, but you're still going to need somebody with a level of expertise that can make sure that whatever's being put out is in alignment with the outcome. And that's where I see the gap in AI right now, is really strong clarity around outcomes and then ultimately making a decision. It's not going to do that yet. Will it down the line? Maybe.
Yeah. So do you think we see it starting off like, it can do some lead generation. It can, maybe you've got these chat bots and all that kind of stuff, which everybody's using them. And if you're not, I can't imagine why you're in business. But anyways, you're utilizing all these kind of initial components to help, whether it be attract, somebody virtually or online, social media, et cetera. And then initial phases of walking them through some of this sales process, and then humans kick in, or where do you think it's going to kind of rear its head first in a significant way?
I think there's different tools for different outcomes, right? So there's, are you familiar with Reggie?
No.
Have you heard? So Reggie, actually a gentleman who used to work for Tony Robbins back in the day, they created a piece of software that hooks into, let's say, Salesforce. But it's AI that runs along your sales team's process. So let's say you have, just to make math simple, let's say you have 100 salespeople. It's going to look at which emails are getting the best response rate, and it's going to ratchet and it's going to adjust everybody's emails to be the one that's getting the best result. It's going to say, okay, in your follow-up sequence, which follow-up email's doing the best? Great. It's going to recalibrate so that your follow-up emails are the ones that are getting the best responses or the best opens. It's going to see certain scripts that the salespeople are using, and it's going to say, hey, this script is working better. So it's going to augment. So it's faster. So here's where I see AI really being of benefit in the sales process, is you can just move quicker. Right. So people who aren't using AI, does it mean that they're going to go out of business? No. Does it give their competition a leg up if they can move faster?
100%. Yeah. Is there any other softwares, Reggie and anything else that?
Yeah, big fan of ChatGPT. So they're just, obviously there's some killer pieces that are there. The piece that I would say with any of these is you need to be really good at asking the right questions or giving the right prompts, would be another way of saying that. It's like bad data in, bad data out. So become a master question asker. Whimsical, I love for process. I think it's just a really cool one that hooks in there. some of the image generation, one that is really fascinating. Have you seen Secta? SECTA?
No, I haven't. I was reading an article actually on it maybe last week, I think.
Pretty wild. So like my Facebook image is an AI image. So for like $40, you can get like 300 headshots, it's wild.
I can make myself better looking.
You can give it a little prompt. Hey, take off 10 years.
Or not better looking, just good
Add
looking.
hair.
Add hair. Take me back to old school days.
The thing that's pretty interesting with that, by the way, it does kind of jack up the teeth. So for whatever reason, like every part of it seems to be dialed in, but for whatever reason, the teeth, it's like every 10 pictures, I'm like, what the hell did it do to my teeth? It just jacks it up.
Yeah. Or put your hand on.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
I've seen that. Somebody's telling me about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, look, it's amazing technology, right? I mean, all of it, and it's only bound to get more and more exciting and more diverse, and it's going to change. How do you think it changes the way decisions are made?
So that's a really interesting one, just because. So we're talking about buyers have changed, right? So the buyer psychology has shifted in a lot of ways in terms of the old school tactics just don't jive anymore. And people are just too savvy knowing leading questions or feel, felt, found, or some of those pieces. At the other end of the spectrum too, buyer confidence is in the toilet because so many people are just expecting something to be fake, or they're expecting the social proof to not be real anymore, or they're not buying into the testimonial videos at the same level, or, the content, they're thinking it's just going to be, AI generated. So yeah, so you definitely have to be mindful of knowing where your consumers are at and where their confidence level is. And a big piece of that, it's at the end of the day, authenticity and integrity are going to be, that's what's going to win. And this is why, I mean, you can tell when stuff's AI written in terms of a lot of the copy nowadays.
Yeah.
But that's why I recommend get you into the red zone, but then make it your own. Same thing with images, same thing with videos. I like AI in terms of cutting videos. So like Descript and some of those softwares that can take one chunk of content and splice it up for you for your organic content. I'm not a big fan in some of these video, like you put in a prompt and it's actually creating full AI video. For me, because of the nature of the niche market that I'm in, my whole framework is integrity and authenticity. So I have a hard time with that piece.
Right. Dude, this was a friggin' awesome, it's an unbelievable conversation. I'm so grateful that you jumped on, but this was like a tutorial on how to create a sales program inside your organization. And I think, at the very beginning, we talked about it. I think you said the words were 98% of people, businesses that you guys come across don't have a sales process in place. And for those of you who've been listening, I hope you've taken a lot of notes. I took a shit ton of notes, man. And I try not to, I've had a few guests on where, the content's been just so unreal that you end up taking, but I think I got 4 pages of notes here. And so this was really, really, really good. I'm really passionate about sales and the integral part that it plays in the business, the role of business. Like I said at the very beginning, nothing happens in business until a sale is made. And I really think that's true. And I really do think that most businesses, in their inception start, by, a artist who is, not all, but many, especially small businesses start with an artist who, perfected their craft, and they don't know how to sell. They really don't. And they have this great idea to start a business and they stumble in this process. And so, I would love for you to just explain how people could get in touch with you. If you're looking for a process to be developed, if you're looking for somebody to consult or coach with, I can't highly recommend Brook and his organization. And if he can't help you, he's going to steer you in a direction I'm sure that they need. So, but dude, thank you so much for your time. Can you just share with people where they can find you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you're a solopreneur, you're a team of one, or you've got a full army of salespeople, we can actually help on all fronts. If you're wanting more information on that, we have our domain is closeeveryone.com. So closeeveryone.com is there's a toolkit. Actually, the 7 steps we walked through today, there's like a very high overview if you want to kind of get your head wrapped around what the structure, what the script framework or the recipe is. For anyone who wants to dig deeper and how we can come into organizations and do all the bells and whistles and help people tune everything up, empirepartners.io. So empirepartners.io. That's our company website. But yeah, what our whole framework in the world of sales is we look at not just what happens in the sales engagement. We actually do a really heavy lift on the psychology of the salesperson with regards to themselves, with their money story, with their association to the product that they're selling, and with their association and their emotional connection to the client. So we do a whole preload on that, which I've never seen or heard anybody else in the sales world talk about.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Obviously, we have. It is. No, it really is. I mean, technically, it's like a 4-week training. But then we have the actual sales engagement piece. And then we have the other side, which is, okay, now you've enrolled somebody. How do you reduce your cancellations? How do you get onboarding just amplified? How do you get more referrals? And how do you provide that world-class raving fan, experience? So
it's awesome.
Yeah, there's two creative ways that we can support, but for us, it's not rocket science now. But if you don't know how to do the math equation, it can feel like rocket science.
Listen, before we started the podcast, you were telling me that you had just launched your own podcast, and you're like four episodes deep, I think you said. So, what is that? The podcast, and where can they find you too?
Yeah, so it's called the Coaching Equation. So it's basically helping people amplify more profit out of your business. So if people have an information product, if you are an expert, a consultant, an author, a coach, doctor, if you have something that's an intangible in terms of it's not a physical like widget, we've got a podcast and we're incredible guests and we dig into a lot of the strategy, similar like our dialogue today. Podcast is called The Coaching Equation.
Apple, Spotify, everything, right? Yeah,
yep.
Got it.
All awesome. The above.
Well, we'll post a link on that. And dude, I'd love to have you back. I would love to get into the psychology of the whole buying process and the salesperson or business person, especially solopreneurs, right? You touched on it at the end there about, people's like psychology of money and where they emotionally are with price inside their business. And I mean, right off the gate, they drop 10, 15, 20 points. And that's all your margin.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. It's a huge piece, and it hooks into part of the recruiting conversation too. But that we'll save that for episode 2. Keep people baited.
Yeah, dude. It's such good seeing you again, man. I'm so grateful to have you on here, and I'm so happy for your success and going out and launching your thing. And like, dude, I take my hat off to what you guys are doing. It's high quality stuff, and it's real thought. Heart-centered stuff too, which is hard to find, I think, a little bit in this industry of the sales coaching and.
I agree, dude. Thank you, man, for bringing me on. And as always, we always have fun, deep conversations. So this has been a blast. So appreciate it.
Well, we'll keep connected, and if you're interested in coming again, I'd love to have you.
Absolutely.
Okay, bro. All right, man. It's good seeing you.